Hello my friends, I'm Lucas and you're watching coldemonspl. If you like my work, please remember to click thumb up, subscribe to my channel and write some comments. Generally, this base was created to host Kübelwagen and Jagdpanzer 4 Lang, but I decided to show you this project as a separate episode, and what you see now is an example of how to easily make a railway base for an 1:35 scale model. Finally, I will show you what it looks like with the mentioned models. First, I prepared pieces of styrofoam to fill the base. Of course, it's best to cut them with a device like this because it ensures 100% that all pieces will be equal. And there is no mess. My children love playing with this device, but it makes a bit of mess. A little PVA glue, a few toothpicks and all the layers are in place. I trimmed the height by about 2 cm to maintain the proper proportions of the entire base. I leave all the cut pieces for later because they will be useful for making other elements in the diorama. I have prepared the most important elements to use in this project. So here we have letters from yen models, a few accessories from mini-art, soft pads for the stand, another element for building the scene from Plus model, dry grass from AK Interactive, some crates from Eureka XXL, paving slabs, barrels from Eureka XXL, various colors of railroad ballast, which I will mix it up, railway tracks from AK Interactive. Of course, you are sure that some little things will appear during the work. And the base is now ready. First, soft pads. Sometimes I cut squares and make smaller triangular pads, but here I cut small pieces of cardboard to level the bottom and frame. I started preparing the scene elements by building a piece of railroad. I poured both pieces on the leftover balsa wood I had after cutting off the diorama walls. A few drops of CA glue were enough to proceed to the next stage. Appropriate positioning is essential and I had it planned in advance. Now all that's left to do is cut it to the right size. To save the material, I glued the railroad with additional pieces of balsa planks and glued the whole thing to the base. I used my idea that some of you have already seen on my other dioramas, for example on Rauchenverboten or Stück Free. I cut boards from the remaining pieces of balsa wood and other pieces found in the drawer with diorama materials. I didn't take their size into account, the length is completely random as it's their thickness. I have 3 sizes here which when arranged will look really nice. I like it more than a perfectly even surface. I glued the boards using PVA glue in the same way as railroad. I filled in all the empty spaces by cutting the boards to the appropriate size and shape. Finally, I cut off the excess walls of the diorama to the height of the boards. Work for 10 minutes and the effect is amazing. On the other side I made some ground using ready-made AK Interactive product. After it dries I will paint it the appropriate color. Leaving the primer to dry, I did some upgrades on the railway sleepers. I strengthened their wooden structure by drawing additional scratches with a hobby knife and saw for cutting small elements. Then I leveled everything with the thin plastic glue. Some of this work will be invisible, maybe even most of it, but I did it for my well-being. After a few hours, when the ground wasn't completely dry, I pressed in some paving tiles. It's supposed to look like a path to the water pump. Well, that's what it looks like. I start painting the slippers with brown as a primer. Note the filling, the spaces between them. The reason is exactly the same as before when gluing this fragment with larger pieces of balsa. You will see why I did that in a moment. I painted the steel elements with dark brown. It's perfect for this job. A very dark wash on the railway sleepers will highlight the scratches I made earlier and darken their appearance accordingly. Once again, the accelerator turns out to be indispensable when working on a diorama and saves time. Modeler's World has various shades of rust and it's worth using them in a project like this because once it dries, it will look perfect on the rail pieces. 2 layers are enough to get a rusty effect. The pencil will be useful for making a polished edge, the same like cotton bud. To color the planks, I first used wash for wood from MIG production. After drying, I added dark wash and brown wash here and there to make several boards stand out with their color and intensity. I whipped all the boards with a piece of paper. Now you can clearly see the different sizes of the boards and I still think it's an amazing effect. To paint the ground I used enamel liquid pigment in the color of dark earth. This is a base of course and in a moment the shade will be completely different. First I applied light earth pigment jockey. A few drops are enough to properly color this piece. Leaving the primer to dry, I started preparing the railroad ballast. I used 4 types of stones that I had in my collection. I had already used them before, so now I didn't have to wonder about their usefulness. The previous container turned out to be a bit too small, so I mixed all the ingredients in a larger plastic box. As you can see, the size and colors are quite diverse. Of course you can use a single color ballast just like the product offered by AK Interactive number 1872, however for me this mixture is perfect for using on my diorama. Proper arrangement takes a few moments and it's worth doing it quite carefully, filling all the nooks and crannies but also exposing the railway sleepers. To hold the stones in place I used pigment cement that is liquid enough to penetrate deep and glue all the stones together. You have to do it at least twice because it's almost certain that you will not glue all the stones at once. To fill the space next to the railroad, I used some elements from MiniArt and Eureka XXL. Boxes, gas cylinders, barrels and reels for energy cables are ideal for this purpose. Of course there is also the train pump from the Plus model that I showed at the beginning. I painted all the elements with acrylic paints and weathered them. Nothing spectacular, just an ordinary work. And now it's a perfect moment to mention my wonderful patrons who support my activity. Massive thanks guys! The people who help me the most are Bulldog09, Christopher Obarski, Dan Dubois, Dan Mikeshak, Hans Zapp, Karsten Inkedi and Steve Ankin. But the people listed just now are also my great patrons. Please don't forget that you can be one of them. And I realize it's not easy these days, but if you have a few bucks you could drop in my cup, that would be great. Thanks! A bit of matte varnish from Modeler's World solved the problem of glossy coat on the stones after glue drying. To unify the color and more precisely to add a bit of grey, you can also use a product from this producer, but this time it's weathering paint in the color of dust. Thin layer applied by airbrush create a cool shade that you clearly see here. Near the water pump I decided to add a few clumps of grass, which would be understandable and logical due to the proximity of water and the moisture that could be in this place. Of course the grass needed painting, so I chose a faded green one for this purpose. After drying it looks perfect. A chain is needed for the pump, and it's not because I like this element on my models, but that's what the producer suggests. After soaking in the blackening liquid, it's perfect for mounting on the pump. As I'm approaching the end of work on the stand, I decided to prepare an inscription for the front wall. For this I used sets of laser cut letters from Yen model, which have been serving me for a long time. I glued all the letters with PVA glue. I painted the walls of the base with black Tamiya paint. 2 layers are okay. Finally, I left it to paint the figures. As I have said many times, this is not something I would like to brag about. I do it at a sufficient level to always have some human factor in my projects. The standing figure was reinforced with a piece of pin and placed in the appropriate place. This way I can remove it for transport and I can be sure that it won't fall when turning the stand. I did the same with the Kübelwagen, but here I didn't use pins but a piece of wire. Only the Jagdpanzer stands loose, but it held by the railway tracks. This is how a base with a railway element was created. It seems to me that it's a simple structure that can be built very easily and quickly, and it will always look good. If you are interested in more photos, please visit my Patreon. Take advantage of 7 days free trial and check what I offer on this platform. Thanks for watching, don't forget to click like, subscribe to my channel and write some comments. That's all for today, see you next time, cheers!